Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got my colleague Joe B from the Contrarians. And today we're going to do a special episode. We're doing overplayed albums, so they say, but we think they're great. How's it going, Joe?
Going well. Thanks for having me on once again. This is always a lot of fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to cover a number of albums where people say they're overplayed, overdone. So, Joe, what's your first pick?
So are we going from bottom to top, or does it
Oh,
make
in
any?
any order
All
whatsoever.
right, this is the first thing that really came to mind when we talked about this episode. I was getting breakfast at a place, and I was back up in Chicago. This was last month, and when the levee breaks came on, and Zeppelin IV has been played to death, and I'm listening. I'm like, this is a phenomenal song, and it's a phenomenal album. And I know every song's been played, overplayed, but you have, it's just a great album. That would probably be my number one pick is Zeppelin IV. It could possibly be, it's definitely in my top Led Zeppelin albums. But the fact that every song's been played so much that Stairway to Heaven is the number one song, but that's a beautiful song as well.
Yes.
But it's a great tune. I mean, it's a great album, and that would probably be my top pick if we went, won the whatever. But
Yeah.
that's what really came to mind because and then Misty Mountain Hop too. Those are probably and those get played a lot as well, but probably the least played out of those. But it's just a great album.
Absolutely.
It's a perfect album, but it's been played to death. But it's
Yeah.
still, when you take a step back, or when like, so I haven't heard when because it got so overplayed, and I'm sitting in this restaurant and I'm hearing, and then I put it in the car and I'm like, this song's awesome. And they sing about Chicago too, which always, tugs at my heartstrings. But
Yeah.
yeah, Led Zeppelin IV, the untitled album, is would be my number one pick.
Yeah, look, that's a good pick. It's always going to get picked because of Stairway to Heaven. It's been
Right.
voted one of the greatest riffs of all time, one of the greatest songs. There's been multiple polls that have been taken, well, in my waters in Australia, and it was like voted the number one rock song on a lot of rock radio.
Right.
I think it gets overplayed. A lot of these albums get overplayed because they're damn good, and that's
Right.
simply it. But my beef is that there are so many deep cuts on some of these albums, or not so deep cuts that don't get the attention they deserve. Like on that album, the song that I always gravitate to is Misty Mountain Hop. I love that song, and I play it and I play it. I love Bonnen's drumming. I love the groove. There's a lot of groove in all of the tracks on Led Zeppelin IV, but that song has just so much groove, but you never hear it on rock radio.
It's so much fun to play on guitar too, because the riff is fairly easy. I totally agree.
Yeah. And Four Sticks, there's so many other songs that don't get the attention, and you just wish occasionally that classic rock radio or rock radio would give some of these tracks a bit of a fair go, but it always sort of defers to Stairway to Heaven. And probably, what would you say, number two in the most popular would be Black Dog, wouldn't it?
Black Dog or Rock and Roll, yeah.
Yes, actually it'd be a toss-up between Black Dog and Rock and Roll.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you were going to do a dream set of Led Zeppelin, those three songs that have to be in the list, that have to be in the song set, or there'd be a riot.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, that's a good one. I'm going to do similar sort of genre, but Black Sabbath Paranoid album. So there are three songs on this album that absolutely get flogged on classic rock radio. And if you're really going to be truly honest about it, Paranoid's the only song that really gets played now. You've got Iron Man that gets played a little bit, War Pigs less so, but Paranoid. And this turns off a lot of people because it is a really decent album, but because Paranoid gets played so much, a lot of people sort of think, oh, overdone, overplayed. But if you're looking at Fairies Wear Boots, Rat Salad, there's some Hand of Doom. There's some really great deep cuts on this album.
Electric Funeral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I totally agree. That was going to be my next on my list. Iron Man does get played a lot here on Sirius Radio. Yeah, but those songs are great songs, but they're played to death, as you said. But yeah, you get deep into Electric Funeral. Hand of Doom is the reason I never touched any drugs because it scared the crap out of me. It's just a
Yes.
great song. I'm like, I'm not touching this stuff
Yep.
when I found out what it was about. But yeah,
Yep.
no, I
Yeah.
I 100% agree. That was gonna be my next pick.
Yeah. And Paranoid is probably their poppiest song out of their whole catalog, and I'm talking about all of Sabbath. It's sort of tailor made for radio. It only ticks in less than 4 minutes, between 3 and 4, and it's heavy, but not heavy, not too heavy that it's going to turn the listeners off when they listen to rock radio. And I think it's made for it. But yeah, it's really a shame because Paranoid is the only song that really gets flogged in radio in these waters, and they
So,
just sort of
Iron
gloss
Man,
over the other tracks.
it's funny. Iron Man gets flogged here too to death.
Yeah,
I was at a football game, college football game, and the band is playing Iron Man. I mean, you
right.
hear that, when the college band is playing your songs, then it's really part of your culture. But it's been
Yeah,
played to death. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's funny
absolutely.
because I went to the same school. My youngest son goes to University of Iowa, and when I went there, I was totally no one liked. There were only a handful of us that liked that metal and all that stuff. And now the band is playing Metallica and they're playing Iron Man.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I don't think it would have hurt that the Iron Man series, Marvel, had Iron Man in the closing credits in the first movie. So that would have pushed into popular culture, Black Sabbath and that particular song. But all right, have you got another one? Because I'm sorry, I stole your thunder. You come up with another one.
No, I have a couple more.
Yeah, go to the next one.
The
'Cause
next one, um, I am more of a fan of the Bon Scott era, but I have to put in Back in Black. And I have a story with this too, because when I found out that Power Up, which I absolutely love that album, the newest AC/DC album, there was an interview. There's a podcast I listened to. Dean Del Rey, he's a comedian, and he had a series of interviews with some of the members of AC/DC, and they're talking about this upcoming album. So I put in Back in Black, and I had not listened to it for so long because it's been played to death, and it's a great album. It's just great. And once again, Hell's Bells as itself, I know you heard it over and over, but it's a great song. But then when you go into Shoot the Thrill and Honey, What You Do for Money, you're like, this is great stuff. And
yep.
I loved this album when it was released, and then it got huge, and that's all you heard on the radio. So you took a break from it. But it's definitely up there for sure. And if you take a step back and don't listen to it for a while because you've heard it so often, you realize how awesome it is.
Yeah, look, I think classic rock radio was built on AC/DC, or was
Yeah.
built on a number of small pool of bands, and AC/DC is definitely one of them. And it's the production of Mutt Lange is just so crisp because he had a great ear, whether you like his stuff or not, but his production was built for radio. So going back
Yes.
to Foreigner 4, Def Leppard, the way he was producing these songs was definitely, how is this going to sound on FM radio or even AM radio? And the way the production on Back in Black is superbly crisp. You can hear the space between the instruments. It's just so sharp. And look, it's probably the last album that I truly love of AC/DC. I like a lot of their 80s stuff, more Train Spotting, but it's the last album. And I often sort of ponder, what would have Bonds sounded on that album, Joe?
I know. Oh, I totally agree. You always wonder that.
Yeah, because I think there's
Now,
a
I'll
lot
tell
of
you what,
spirit
I
of Bond on that album.
I really love the new album. I think they just hit a grand slam with it. So I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think that Power Up is phenomenal stuff. It
Oh, it's
really is.
good. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
I would say it's their best since Back in Black. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go out there. So we're contrarians, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. And I actually like Black Ice as well, because remember, Black Ice came out and that was a big gap between albums.
Right. Yeah.
And when that came out, there was nothing like that. It just felt so fresh. Like, if they take notoriously a long time between albums, And I think rock radio or the music that was out there had shifted so much. Just playing it, it was just like putting on an old pair of slippers or an old friend coming back. You just don't hear anything like that with other bands, do you? With AC/DC, they've just got that niche, and it's perfect.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to go to another one, and this song, Joe, has been flogged to death. And this band, and I reckon you wouldn't even have to buy the album, but you would know probably 75% of the songs. And I'm talking this little number, Hotel California.
Yeah.
I played it last night, and look, I didn't like it when I was younger, but as I get older, I appreciate this album and how great it is because the songs are well crafted. And just going through the songs, Hotel California, New Kid in Town, Life in the Fast Lane, it's just Victim of Love even. It's basically what FM and AM radio was built on. And I don't think you need to buy the album, but you know it. And it's still a great album. And that Hotel California is such a well-constructed song. Even the guitar work between Felder and Joe Walsh, you know, that little guitar break, that's probably one of my favorite guitar breaks of all time, you know, hard rock, metal, or rock and roll. What do you think of that album?
Well, I was never a big Eagles fan. So I have
and it's
to
the only Eagles album I have.
Not a big Eagle fan, so I don't really listen to them. But That being said, I saw the documentary on them, and the reason this album is great sounding and sold so much, I think, is because of the input of Joe Walsh and Don Felder, and they're kind of put aside by the two stars. And Don Felder, I mean, Don Felder wrote the intro to Hotel California, right? And he's been the whole business aspect, the ugly aspect of that, where he hasn't been part of the Eagles. But I mean, it's a huge album. I can't.
Yeah. I mean, all those songs I listed, you knew them, didn't you?
Yeah. I'm not a big Eagle. See, there's certain bands. So like Fleetwood Mac, I don't know if they're going to be in your. Maybe they'll hit you too. But I've learned to appreciate Fleetwood Mac. Eagles, I never really have.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, like, my parents listened to that stuff, so I always had to rebel against my parents. I think that had a lot to do with it. And so, like, my mom and dad would listen to Hotel California and be like, "Oh, I want to go listen to Black Sabbath. I want to listen to the Sex Pistols." But yeah.
Look,
I think that Joe Walsh and Don Felder's contribution to that album get way overlooked. Because Joe Walsh just rips on. You mentioned Life in the Fast Lane and his leads, and Joe Walsh makes that album, gives it another dimension. Definitely, it's more harder edged, and it's less of that country rock, avocado mafia type sound.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only Eagles album I'll buy. Well, I've got it. It's the only Eagles album that I have a desire to have. I think it's a fantastic album. I don't really, I'm not a huge fan, but I just really appreciate it. And I reckon, Joe, if you listen to it, you probably would appreciate it, even from a production and songwriting point of view. And some of the songs that don't get played on radio, like Pretty Maids in a Row, The Last Resort, etc., they're mighty fine songs. And the production, again, like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, it's made for rock radio. And whoever, the person who was producing it basically just thought, had the right set of ears just to put the right mix and make it, sort of transcend into FM and AM. But that's my choice. But that Hotel California gets flogged, literally.
So my next pick, and this band, this album has been played to death, but I've never ever gotten sick of it, and that's Boston's first album.
Right.
It's perfect. It really is, and I've gotten to a point where I don't know. It's definitely in my top 20. It might be in my top 10, but it's just a great album. It's innovative. I mean, it was innovative before Eddie Van Halen came out. So, Tom Schultz was that he had that distinct sound that no one could copy. and the songs are beautifully written. It's beautiful production.
Mm.
Um, I'll put it on a lot still. I mean, like so, like the previous two albums I mentioned, I will take. You know, you appreciate how great they are because I've taken a break from them. But this album, I never took a break from, and I still love it. So I just love the first Boston album. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It is.
I think,
And
I
the,
think,
and the vocals too. I mean, it's everything about it is absolutely perfect.
yeah.
I mean, Brad Delp was such an amazing voice. He
Yeah.
really was. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an American thing. I don't think they were that big in Australia. However, More Than a Feeling got played a lot on rock radio. And I would say that if I had to compare it between AC/DC and the Stones and the Beatles, you would call it medium rotation. But
Okay.
I definitely, I've seen a lot of shows in America and
No,
funny,
every
we're on
song the
social
album.
media, and Boston were just huge and had such a cultural impact in America. And I agree with you. I think he had a great voice, and the production
Honestly,
is just
I don't
fantastic.
even I don't even know if there's so here in the United States, every song except for maybe "Let Me Take You Home Tonight" was played to death, and
Wow.
still,
Okay.
you know, I More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind,
Yeah.
you know, Long Time, Rock and Roll
Yeah.
Band, Smoking a Hitch a Ride. You hear it all the time still, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's satellite radio or regular radio, all those
Yeah.
songs. But it never gets old for me. So
Yeah.
that's that's probably gonna be a difference out of the rest of my picks.
Yeah. You know what? We could do a show on More Than a Feeling because the production on that particular song is outstanding. And the way he holds the sustain on
Right.
that there's a particular note and he holds it over the chorus or something. It's just phenomenal.
You
And
know,
yeah,
the thing I can't figure out about this Boston is they never got they never got the like Van Halen level or Kiss or Led Zeppelin level. Like they had the huge. Don't get me wrong, they're huge and they had the huge album, but after that they kind of fell off. You know, fell off and never replicated that. And
yeah,
I don't know if it was Tom just being focused on being a gearhead and everything and
yeah.
messing around with bands, but yeah, I just don't know why. Maybe they didn't have any stage presence, or they didn't have that. They
Mm,
didn't have that Amy Roth or that
yeah.
Oz, you know, or that Plant and Page stage presence. I don't know, but I would think with a head start like this, and this could possibly lead into that other episode we were talking about earlier.
Mm,
That I'll save that for you.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, they. I mean, don't get me wrong. Their other albums sold millions, but not like this. It wasn't a diamond album, and they never became that Van Halen type band.
Yeah. Well, I think he
Yeah.
was a perfectionist. That's what I read. And they took an extraordinary long time in between albums and laying the pre-production and doing the production with those songs. And you can see it. It's second to none. They sound crisp. Um, it's just really in your face, that sort of production, and it's made for radio. But yeah, look, I think that's a really outstanding choice, and More Than a Feeling. How many bands have actually cribbed that riff?
Yeah.
Hello,
Right.
Pat Benatar, hit me with
Yeah.
your.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why doesn't
Even,
anyone pick that up? I don't see people.
no.
But yeah, look, that's a good pick. My next one is what we were talking about, Rumours, Fleetwood Mac. So every song on this, and it's got a cross-generational audience. It's the number one vinyl album in the world. And it's because a lot of kids have discovered it through their parents. It's on rock radio. Every single song from top to bottom, or most of the songs top to bottom, get flogged and played on rock radio. But the reason why it keeps on going is because a lot of the kids have discovered it through their parents' record collection.
That
They're
TikTok
on
video.
ads. It's on
There's that
TikTok.
TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge.
And it's debatable. They may be bigger than what they were in the day. I know Rumours sold by the bucket load, and it was up there with the highest selling album. But I think it is definitely the number one vinyl album in the world and just continues to tick over. So you look at it, you've got Dreams, Don't Stop, Go Your Own Way. There's commercials aplenty in Australia. Like I think there's a car commercial that does that. The Chain, You Make Loving Fun. Gold Dust Woman. And considering all the acrimony, you basically had two couples splitting up, swapping partners, doing coke. God knows what else was being done on that album. And
Right.
out of that chaos is just lightning in a bottle. And, their subsequent albums never just hit those heights. I like their other stuff like Tusk and Mirage, but this is the gold daddy. And I guess in America that it gets flogged as well.
Oh, yes, definitely. But the thing with me is, so, and I mentioned it briefly before when we talked about the Eagles, when they were big, when I was young, I was not a big fan. That being said, I really appreciate it because I was never into them, and now I can listen to all those songs. One of those, and we talked about this before, I do have a weakness for female singers. It just pulls me in. So, when you hear Christine McVie or Stevie Nicks' voice, it's great. But they're great songs. Lindsey Buckingham's a phenomenal guitar player.
Isn't he ever?
He
Underrated.
picks everything. Yeah,
Yes,
he plays. He picks everything. The story about how they got together, on the Dave Grohl documentary, was amazing. How they just were in separate studios at Sound City. But yeah, I agree with you here. I think the reason I appreciate this album is because I never got into it when you heard it all the time on the radio, and now when I hear it, I'm like, hey, this is really good stuff. This is great stuff. So I really like it. Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
There are so many bands that you and I have got a similar sort of history. I love my punk and my death metal, my thrash metal. But as you get older, your ears expand into different wheelhouses. And that was one album that, I wouldn't have given a second two hoots in the day. But now I just think, gee, it's really seriously a great album. And I can understand why the kids get into it. And I think there's a lot of aspiring young singer-songwriters. They look to that album because the songs are so well crafted, just on a songwriting level. But yeah,
it's interesting because I was at a Chicago Blackhawks hockey game. This was a few years ago, and it was when they announced one of their big tours on those. They were announcing tours between periods. And it was a young girl in back of me, and she starts going, "Loving You," and she was in her 20s. So you're right. The young people know the songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't even know much about TikTok, but some guy was skateboarding with a bottle of soda, and one of the Fleetwood Mac songs, and that just blew up too. And yeah.
It's
phenomenal. And then it became a commercial, and it became a commercial for some, I think it was for TikTok, and Stevie Nicks and Mick Fleetwood were in the commercial.
Yeah, that's amazing. And all they need to do next is to put it in the next season of Stranger Things, and it'll sell a further billion. Hello, Kate Bush and Metallica. Gee, they're all recharting again, Joe.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because that's my next pick, the Metallica Black Album, and
I will save that. So yeah.
Okay. So, and this is when I saw them on their last tour. There was a big gap between me seeing them live. I saw them open up in a club actually for Raven when their first album first came out.
Wow.
I did that. You can look it up on YouTube. I was one of the guys that ripped Kirk Hammett's guitar off his back at the Chicago Metro. Okay. But so there was a big gap in touring, and then I went to see him on this a couple times in this latest. No, they just had a latest tour. The tour, like in 2019, they played football stadiums and they went to hockey arenas. I saw them at a football stadium and a hockey arena, and it was just great stuff. But when they play like Unforgiven and even Enter Sandman's a great song, Sad But True. And it's like, again, you take a step away from the album because it's so overplayed. And I know this is the album where they sold out, but they sold. This is a huge album, and I was a fan from day one. I saw them open up in a club, so I loved this album when it came out. It got overplayed. There were mandatory Metallica nights on the radio, and most of the songs are played off this album. But when you take a step back and don't listen to it for a little while, and I saw them live, and I listened to it on the way home from the concert. it's a great album. And Bob Rock's production is pristine, and they just took it to another level. They really
Yep.
did.
Yeah. Do you think there was a little bit of people think it's overplayed, and they're a little bit nasty on the album because there's a group of people that used to think Metallica was my band. So
Yes.
this little small cult band from the San Francisco Bay Area. They played this aggressive music, which was so different to what was going in LA at the time, because you had your spandex and party all the time type of bands. So they had their own little thing doing, and people had followed them from day one, and then they became popular, and they're not my band anymore. And maybe it was sort of like a reaction, like, oh, okay, I don't feel like I'm, it's unique.
That definitely
anymore.
happened because, and then, so after this album got huge and got overplayed, you started getting that. And then when they came out with Load and Reload, I knew guys that were like, I can't listen to Metallica anymore. I'm done. They cut their hair, they're wearing makeup. And I thought, I was always like, well, they liked Motorhead, but they also like bands like Diamond Head, and Lars was in the U2. They just weren't in the, the heavy, fast metal. So I just saw them in broadening their horizons, and I thought they had some pretty good songs in the 90s as well. So I like most of their catalog, except Saint Anger I can't get through. But this album is great. It's a great album, and that's why it got huge. And they just, man, they hit it. And again, this is another one. You hear Enter Sandman, you hear high school football bands playing it, and football teams and sports teams coming out to it. It's just crazy. And when I was in college, I was the only me and a couple other guys, the only guys listening to Metallica, and they thought we were dorks. So now they're playing it on campus, as part of the band and the intro for the football team.
Are there any deep cuts on the album that you wish got played more on radio?
Let's see. Don't Tread on Me, Through the Never is a great song. There's some of the deeper cuts are great. Holier Than Thou, that's more it goes more into their thrashier side on that song. But I like those songs a lot, and it's a nice break from the songs that you hear all the time when you go back to revisit this album.
What was your when you first heard Enter Sandman or saw the video? What was your first reaction, Joe?
Oh, I loved it. In fact, I wasn't that big of a fan for And Justice for All. I kind of got bored with that album, believe it or not. I thought this was a step up. The production, just right off the bat, and I just thought it was great. And I like when my favorite bands get huge. I get it. You get the bandwagon jumpers, and then it's all right enough. I'm one of those guys. I saw them in a club, but in a way, at first I'm like, okay, great. They're finally enjoying their success. So I had a very positive reaction to it for sure.
Yeah, I think so, and I agree with you, because a lot of people just sort of jump off the bandwagon and just following the trends. But interesting you say about And Justice for All, because I actually think the Black Album is a stronger album. And a lot of it is more hard rock.
Yeah, I don't know if something about with Cliff dying and the production, and there's something about that album I like it, but it kind of depresses me, and this was a step up for me, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that's a good one. My next one is off the Tattoo You album, Rolling Stones. Start Me Up. That absolutely gets flogged. And, this album gets played because of probably two tracks, Waiting on a Friend and Start Me Up. But there's so many great little cuts on it. Hang Fire, Slave, Little T&A, songs that have been in the Stones catalog, and it just doesn't get played. It's an overplayed album, a lot of people say, because of those two songs, and Start Me Up was just such a huge hit. And a lot of people say it's their last great album.
Possibly, yeah. I can't argue with that. I mean, it's interesting. I was just listening to Street Fighting Man right before we hopped on together, because I heard it last night. I can't. That's a great pick. It really is. really
60
is.
years. They are celebrating 60
I
years
know.
this year of being a band, and that is just absolutely phenomenal. And
I'll
I
tell
really
you
don't
what.
know how long they will go, because the mind may be willing, but the body, it can only last so long. And I think that they probably lost their soulmate in Charlie.
Yes.
I saw them 4 or 5 years ago, and they were still phenomenal. It was the first time I ever saw them. I was up front, and Jagger is he is a great showman and
That's
so
the
much
thing.
energy.
That's the thing about him. He really drives the band. I mean, if you think about it, Mick and Keith are the only two original members, but Mick, I told you I saw Ted Nugent last night, and I've seen all these. You see all these nostalgia acts, and they have it, but they don't. But Mick still brings that energy for his age. Holy cow! I mean, I even saw Paul McCartney a
Oh,
couple months ago,
yeah.
but I could see a tailing off of energy with him too. Which it happens because the guy's 80 years old. But Mick, I don't know, he just still brings it, really does. And I've seen him several times over the years. I think the first time I saw him was on this, was it the Sun Girls tour? I saw him on a few tours, but yeah, it was. They're always great live. They're always great.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely
and it's a great
phenomenal.
pick. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that was yeah, excellent.
Um, have you got another one, or?
I got one more,
Okay, cool.
and it's so only two of these songs were overplayed to death. The rest of the album is more deeper cuts. But I got to go with Queen News of the World, which I picked as one of my top albums of 1977 on the Contrarians. And I just want to say, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. I know everyone knows it, but they're genius songs. And it's a genius way to start an album. It was a daring way to start an album. It was out of left field. Queen, the thing about Queen, they had Night at the Opera, which was huge, and Day at the Races was, and then they come out with this. They were able in that 70s and early 80s until they, unfortunately, with Hot Space, but until up to the Game, they were always able to keep that one step ahead where they were able to do something innovative. And We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions are just so weird and strange when you first listen to them. And if you just, take out two of the most played songs ever, they're just phenomenal songs. The rest of the album is just a masterpiece. From whether it's Sheer Heart Attack, their attempt at punk rock, which is great, to Spread Your Wings is just a beautiful song. I mean, what can you say? I mean, they're all perfect musicians. It's a perfect band, perfect songwriting. And Freddie's probably the greatest singer of all time. And I have to go with News of the World. I mean, it has two of the most overplayed songs, but those overplayed songs are genius, and it made the album great because they took that daring step to start an album with such weird songs.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good pick. And those two songs were built for sports. It's a song that's built for sports anthems or sports stadiums. Right. And right. I think they had the intention of writing an album opener that was going to project something that was simple, catchy, and it's just earwiz. You hear it and you'll never forget it.
But I think at this time with Queen, I think there was an organic element to it, though. So I don't know if they really wrote it with that intention. I think there was some intention there.
It might be accidental, but it's turned out to be like that.
But I think it's just so daring to open up a song where it's just basically stomping and clapping, and you have the greatest singer of all time singing on it. But they took a step away from that, News of the World, Day at the Races sound, and went into this area, and it obviously worked. It's great stuff.
I think there's quite a few Queen albums that would go into this category that we're talking about, overplayed albums that we think are great, because there is about 3 or 4 in their catalogue that are overplayed through classic rock radio, but there's so many great songs that don't get the recognition. Another album is The Game. Yes. The song that gets played off that and flogged is Another One Bites the Dust, but there are so many other great songs on that album.
Yes.
as an example. But look, they are a kind of a greatest hits band, but there are so many great little deep cuts that just don't get played on rock radio. And
I'll tell you what, they're bigger than ever. They're doing this tour, they're doing this thing with Adam Lambert, and I saw him in Chicago, and that was when they played the Chicago United. I almost said the stadium. United Center is where Michael Jordan, ended his career in Chicago. The Chicago Blackhawks, the Bulls. This is the first concert I saw there where it was a Michael Jordan sellout talk. It was standing room. And this was for Queen with Adam Lambert singing. And I saw them with Freddie only once. And I was looking around. And again, the girl next to me had to be 15. And she knew all the songs, all the words to the songs. And not just the big hits, like Don't Stop Me Now, which is now, I guess it's huge for some reason. She knew every word to Don't Stop Me Now. And I know that movie came out and they got huge, but I mean, God bless Roger Taylor and Brian May for keeping the legacy alive, because holy cow, they are gigantic right now. It may be bigger than ever, like you said, with Fleetwood Mac.
yeah, I think it'd be a toss up between Queen and Fleetwood Mac in regards to the stakes.
Don't get me wrong. I saw them with Freddie. With Freddie, they were they kicked ass. With Adam Lambert, it's more like a Vegas production of Queen. It's too perfect. That being said, they sold. They had to have almost 20,000 fans there at this concert. I've never seen a crowd like that. The only time I've seen crowds in that stadium was for Chicago Blackhawks Stanley Cup championship or Michael Jordan basketball. And Adam Lambert with Queen had this for a band. It was amazing.
Absolutely. I think that band has had a couple of kicks of post Freddie's death popularity. So you had Wayne's World with
Right.
Bohemian Rhapsody. That gave a bit of a people reappraising and going back into the Queen catalogue. And then that sort of built over time. And then you had the movie, which I don't really like at all.
No.
And maybe I'm
And
contrarian there, but I think it was like a Mills and Boone. It glossed over a lot of the real story, and it wasn't very edgy at all. But it printed money for that band, definitely. And I agree with you, they are bigger than ever. And again, one of the biggest vinyl selling bands in the world. I think their greatest hits, the one with the photo frame on a black cover, is again one of the highest selling vinyl albums in the world, and that continues to tick over, and it's just in the charts. So look, I think that's a fantastic pick. I got two more that I'll quickly sneak in, and these are kind of classic rock staples. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. So this has never ever been out of the charts. I think it's got the record for the longest charting Billboard album of all time. It's a great album. Again, I'm a bit of a Pink Floyd train spotter. I don't have a lot of their albums, but the ones that I have, I really love. And the song that gets played on this one on rock radio is Money. You don't hear Us or Them. You don't hear the Brain Damage or Breathe or Time. You just hear Money. And I don't know if that's the situation in America, but this is definitely another act that gets played a lot.
Yeah, so Us and Them got played a lot. That album got played a lot years ago. I don't know about recently, but that's definitely an album that obviously that's in the top selling albums of all time as well. Yeah. My Pink Floyd too. I dove in with Animals and was really into that album, and then the album, I really got sick of The Wall. I thought maybe you'd choose that, but yeah, The Wall. I just heard that I don't know, something happened with The Wall, and it killed disco. I guess I'm the same level of Pink Floyd with you. I revisit Animals from time to time. But
Yeah.
Dark Moon's a great pick.
Yeah, and I think Animals is getting a reissue very shortly, but they've got very dedicated fans. I like their early stuff. I like their first album with Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd, the self-titled. But
You
yeah,
think that,
I'm a train spotter, and
you think they'll ever
maybe
get
it's a
back with
band
Roger?
I'll do more of.
Will they ever get back with Roger Waters, or are they just content?
I don't think so. I think they're
Yeah.
grumpy old men. It was surprising they got back for the Live Aid rebooted. Remember when they did the Live Aid concert, which was like 20 years after or whatever it was, and to get
Right.
them on the one stage was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
But Roger's still doing his stuff. He's still
Yeah,
doing
he's
the
on
wall,
tour
and
now. He's starting a tour now, or he's on tour now.
yeah,
So
and seems to be doing quite well.
yeah, and I think
Yeah,
he does 2 or 3 acts in his set, if I read correctly. But
absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm going to finish up with one of your favorites, Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. All right, and you don't have the original cover, which that original album cover was brutal.
It
Yeah,
is, and worth a
yeah,
lot of money too, if you've got it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think it just gets played a lot. I think out of any heavy metal band in the 80s, that one still gets flogged and played to this very day on rock radio in Australia. I would imagine it's the same
Yes,
in America, and it's
definitely.
"Sweet Child of Mine." Welcome
Yeah.
to the Jungle.
Welcome
There's
to the
just
jungle.
there's a certain number of songs, but
Welcome to the jungle's arena rock for sure. You hear it at every sporting event here.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you don't hear Rocket Queen, you don't think Anything Goes, or You're Crazy, or a lot of those other songs. It doesn't, I think it's a great album. I've done shows about this. It brings out a lot of haters because they are a love or hate band, but the lovers are definitely out there and they're still touring, getting good
And they're
crowds.
and they're great live. They really are, and they mix up the songs. This is an interesting album for me because I don't know, there's times where I can go back to it once in a while. The dual guitar work between Slash and Izzy is phenomenal. I got it when it first came out, and I lived that hole where I saw them open up for, first of all, they were going to open up for the Cult at a smaller venue in Chicago, and they canceled it because of lack of ticket sales. Then they came with Alice Cooper, and they almost canceled that because of lack of ticket sales. And they played at University of Illinois Chicago, with their venue's still there. It's small, and even only half the floor. Guns N' Roses opening up for Alice Cooper. Year later, they just blew up with Sweet Child of Mine and Paradise City and everything, and then they got huge. But it took almost 2 years for them since the release of the album, and then unfortunately the personal problems and the rock star lifestyle overtook the music, and I guess that's my bigger issue with them. And I think that they could have released one great album instead of 2 mediocre albums with the subsequent Use Your Illusions. But this album, if you take a step away from it and put the headphones on, it's friggin' great.
It's a
really
masterpiece, and it was
it
was definitely a breath of fresh air.
It was
When this came out after the excesses of the LA type of glam hair metal bands. Not that I have a problem with those, because some of them really good releases, but this one was like a breath of fresh air. It was part Stones, part Aerosmith, had a lot of swagger, good songwriting, good musicianship, had a bit of click. I mean, even Steven Adler, he's not the greatest drummer in the world, but he had swing, and the songs actually swung,
Duck's a punk rocker. They had that element.
Loves the Damned and the Pistols and Johnny Rotten.
I'll tell you what, man. What really nailed this album for me when I first got it, and I'm like, because I was getting sick of that whole corporate rock LA scene. The second song, "It's So Easy," when the way he drops the F-bomb, he says "F off." I was like, okay, I'm all in. These guys,
Attitude.
I want to run. I don't want to pick a fight with these guys. That's what I got. And I'm like, this is great. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, whatever, it just got played to death. But
It did.
Yeah,
And would you
yeah.
agree it's the only album of the 80s of heavy metal that is sort of gone cross-generational, still gets played to this day? Because I sort of see bands like Motley Crue, Your Poisons, even some of the later albums of Aerosmith, they're not going to get played in 10 years' time, but I think this one is going to continue on.
I
Um,
think certain like I think Kickstart My Heart will always get played. I think, yeah, there's certain songs, but as far as a full album, you might be correct there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because there are a lot of bands that were huge in that 80s period that are forgotten now, like Rat. Who talks
Right.
about
Well,
Rat anymore?
that just can't get their stuff together. And
Yeah,
I heard an interview with John Corabi. If you want to read John Corabi's book, because it just isn't Motley Crue, it's his Rat and everything.
yeah.
I mean, he goes in. He said when he was in Rat, he said Warren DeMartini. So that Stephen Pearcy wasn't in the band at this time. They had Jizzy from
Jizzy
uh,
Pearl. Yep.
this was like around 2000, and he was the rhythm guitarist. He took or the second guitar. So it was Warren DeMartini and Blotzer in the band at the times.
Yep.
He said they would go to rehearsals and DeMartini and Blotzer would argue for 2 to 3 hours on the tempo of the first song. And he said they just can't get out of their own way. You know, and Motley Crue learned how to do it. They hate each other and they're making
Yeah.
millions of dollars, and they get together.
Yeah.
I know a guy, Metallica. I knew a guy who wrote for a magazine. He was at Metallica when they had the Big Four show at Yankee Stadium. God, it's almost going on 20 years now. But he said Metallica all took separate limos. They're not traveling together. It's a business. It's not.
Yeah, they're not friends.
Not friends anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if Rat got their shit together, Poison got their shit together, and they're making money, and they're putting on a great show. If they're in that package tour now. I mean, CC DeVille is just on another level now. But
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I brought up Rat because that. Wow. Yeah. But as far as a full album from the 80s, I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I can't think of any. I think if you go 100 years where you and I are long gone, and you look in an encyclopedia and you look up the category 80s hard rock or heavy metal, you'll probably see AC/DC Back in Black, and you'll see this album, and that's it.
Right.
I cannot see any other bands in that era that will hit an encyclopedia.
I think maybe one or two Motley Crues. Like I think "Kickstart My Heart" will be always
maybe as a song, but
as a song, yeah. But the whole Dr. Feelgood album, no.
Yeah. I mean, another band that I want to talk about very quickly, because we're going off on a tangent, but that's okay. Quiet Riot, the very first heavy metal number one. One album gone. They're merely a minor footnote in music, aren't they?
It's unbelievable. I know. Yeah.
But that album sold, Metal Health sold 5 mil, and it was phenomenal. They playing to 400,000 people in the US Festival, and a couple of years later, gone ski.
What about the self-titled Whitesnake album with John Sykes? And David Cohen,
I still think that's talked about. That's still,
well, in
Europe, he's still, looked at quite as a golden god type thing. Maybe not as much in the US, but there's still, I think, there's still some significance there. But compare it to Quiet Riot, where they can struggle. I think Rudy Sarzo's resurrected the band, and he's not even in the original band, and they're going to be just playing fairs and puppet shows.
Pearl's the singer. Jizzy Pearl's the Quiet Riot singer. They just played at that crazy fest in Nashville. Yeah. Sarzo, it's no original members, and
absolutely, and that's another topic about carrying on a band and you've got nothing to do with it. It's the band name.
I just bought tickets for Foreigner. I saw Foreigner back in the day when they were Foreigner, for the 4 tour and everything.
Yeah.
But the last few times I've seen Foreigner, Mick Jones has only been with them once. The other times, full-fledged cover band. And they're great. The guy from Hurricane, I forget his name now.
Kelly Hansen.
Yeah, Kelly Hansen. Yeah. He sounds just like Lou Graham. I mean, they put on a great show. But it's a tribute band. Yeah, that's a whole other tangent we can go into.
Absolutely. But look, I think at the end of this, and this has been a really fun chat, Joe, is that overplayed maybe equals great music because it's overplayed for a reason.
Yes,
Radio will not play a song if it's a dud. And if it connects to the audience and it keeps the ratings going and it's ticking out and the sales sort of correspond, um, the punters must be right. The punters are not always wrong. And in the case of these albums that we've discussed, they've connected with the audience and they're overplayed, maybe, but they connect with the audience. And I reckon they're pretty damn fine.
I agree. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having me on. It's
No,
always
no problems. So please subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. You know what to do. Just put some comments. Tell me what you think your overplayed albums are. And I'll be catching up with Joe B. We'll do another show very, very soon. Cheers.